If you tell the average person a reasonable thing, it will be easy for them to understand. If you try to force someone to believe something unreasonable with threats and harassment, they may pretend to agree, but they will be waiting for the day when the stigma around being reasonable is gone. Journalists want you to not talk about wokeness and DEI following their failure to convince people that Veilguard is a return to form for the classic dark fantasy series Dragon Age. Journalists are now throwing fits about DEI and wokeness even being talked about at all, as people realize the forced insertion into games, the bad writing that sounds like modern-day coastal USA in every game about the systemic bullying and blacklisting of devs who do not comply with corporate ideology. Yet, journalists and consultants were the ones who spent a decade talking about this. The very consultants who pushed to get this into every last corner of entertainment in order to make it unavoidable are now whining that we can't avoid talking about it anymore. There are journalists legit claiming that the imaginary far right in gaming are using the DEI and woke slurs. It's terms they made up and forced on everyone else. This is their language, and now they call what they made up slurs? If you didn't want us talking about this stuff, why'd you spend a decade trying to force us to talk about it, no matter how much nobody wanted to? It is insane, and normal people are just waiting to be able to call the insane, insane. We have localizers telling us they need to put in modern words, some not even culture war related, and just dumb skibbity-riz-giat YOLO lingo bet that almost nobody knows what they mean. They make up new terms and ideology passwords meant to help them identify true believers, like microaggressions, birthing person, bonus hole, philippanks, and latanks, and thrust them into games and anime where it makes no sense, under the guise that this allows the audience to understand cultural differences. If they will turn around and say they need to turn a rice ball into a jelly donut, as there's no way an American can figure out a rice ball is food. They'll complain about how sexualized games are, yet singing praises for games with complete nudity and sex with bears. And they are in lockstep, colluding on everything, no matter how insane it gets. This is a common cult tactic, shown to work. If you repeat a lie long enough and punish those who call it a lie, it will be accepted as truth. You'll notice none of these journalists or influencers had a problem with the excessive social justice propaganda being forced into entertainment for the last 10 years. They only take issue with it now because people have grown tired of it and are pushing back. They will advocate for anyone they disagree with to be silenced, have their social media banned, their freedoms revoked, go after their job, dox them, try to get them fired, go after sponsors, and so on. But then, if they have people disagreeing with them publicly, they will act like having someone disagree is violence against them. They will say that if people show the world what they are doing or saying, they are being silenced. This is how Gamergate 2 started. Someone listed the games that a consultant corporation worked on, and they act like having their work known is censorship, while they are actually trying to censor everyone else. Now, there are a lot of so-called neutral, fence-sitting journalists and influencers weighing in. It is wild seeing people lament that the gaming industry has politics and culture war right now who were silent on it for the past decade. If you only take issue with politics being discussed in the gaming industry right now because gamers are repudiating the decade of woke extremism, why didn't you take issue with the lead-up? People lost their jobs, were bullied out of the industry, were harassed and smeared by these consultants for years unhindered. Even knowing that the majority of gamers do not agree with the ideology of Dustborne and Concord, as proven by their abysmal failures, the woke ideology instills so much terror in industry elites, they would rather side with the small journalist class than with everyone else. The woke and the non-woke are not the same. This is going to be a very common comparison people try to make. The woke have to hide in the shadows. They have to silence opposition. They refuse to talk to non-believers out of fear of excommunication and an inability to back up their beliefs when challenged. They blacklist and stalk those who leave the cult. They want everyone who is not them silenced, and anything they say themselves to be amplified unless it ever looks bad for them, in which case they will bury it, even going so far as to use copyright strikes to do so. They never call their own out, and no matter how bad the lie is, they will repeat, echo, and protect it until it becomes completely indefensible, at which point they will pretend it never happened. They will block you and continue to talk about you behind your back. And they will Karen to the manager about how this person needs to be removed from the platform in order to make it safe for them. The non-woke is simply everyone else. We want everyone to have a voice. We want the truth about games to be known, not hidden. We want discussions to take place. There is room for disagreement. There is room for different opinions. Even though the woke are the antithesis of what we want from gaming, forcing ideology into everything, there is not a call for them to be silenced from social media for their terrible takes on gaming, because it is good for us to have our voices heard, and it is good for us for what they say and they do to be known. We are not the same. Gamers deserve a gaming industry without wokeness infecting writing, creating toxic positivity situations that silence developers, human resources being weaponized to push out industry veterans, the media burying the truth to protect major corporations, and AAA studios colluding with journalists to deceive gamers and sell games, like Cyberpunk and Veilguard, on lies from hand-picked reviewers that never represent the audience. Let's not forget that the current downfall of journalism started when journalists were called out for access journalism and a lack of ethics. And their response, rather than proving they were ethical, rather than investigating and either disproving or proving the accusations and then denouncing them, journalists decided the response to collusion and corruption accusations was to go all in on it, to insult and attack anyone who called it out and pointed out it was bad, to close ranks around the wrongdoers and protect the most corrupt so they could fester and become the norm in games media. There was never any attempt to prove the people who called them out wrong. You realize that, right? They didn't even try to prove they were ethical, or distance themselves from the ones who were caught. This would be like if Diddy were released today, and the first thing he does is announce he's holding a huge party. In a way, I'm starting to respect the game's media the more I think about it. Someone shone a light on their legitimacy, and the media decided to douse their own reputations in gasoline and light the fire themselves. There's something brazen and respectable about going so balls deep in your own asshole, Diddy would name you Freak Off Goat of the Year. Do keep in mind, content creators, non-woke gamers did not cause the fall of gaming journalism. If the journalists said reasonable, truthful things, a reasonable person would have believed them. The collapse of the media's integrity is completely self-inflicted. They are not angry we caused games journalists to lose their ethics. They are angry we pointed it out.
Mid. When did you get back?